Hi, today we'll discuss issues that affect large number of countries and such global concerns influence the national policies as well. In today's session, we'll cover global cooperation frameworks, we'll talk about global public goods, negotiations in global policy forum, we'll also talk about the threats to emergence of global consensus. Global cooperation frameworks in this globalized world, the policies are influenced by both national and international environment. WHO, ILO, WTO, UNDP, World Bank, IMF, etc. have often bearings on national policies of countries. That is especially true for developing and poor countries. They are particularly vulnerable to global events and actions and therefore have to depend heavily on the international community for financial and technical assistance. In the process, the context of their national policies gets interlinked with the international environment. National issues like poverty, social welfare, gender issues, environment, etc. on the national policy agenda have become global issues. Such issues require transnational cooperation, which implies that now the national policies may have to accommodate the global concerns as well. Laswell had argued that policy sciences should take account of world trends and forces when considering the context of policy problems. This also means that the nation states have less control on the policy agenda. For example, India has to reduce and gradually phase out its subsidies given in the agriculture sector, though domestically there is resistance to this. We may categorize such global issues that influence the national policies into two categories: socio-economic issues like poverty, gender, health, education, human rights, etc. And then there are commercial issues like trade, commerce, foreign direct investment, industries, etc. There is a distinct category of global public goods also, which may be considered as a cross-cutting theme in the two categories that includes large number of subjects. What are global public goods? There are problems and solutions that reach across national borders, resulting in a growing need for international collective action. Such global public goods must occupy a much more prominent place on development agenda of all the countries. There are other examples also. Modern trading nations regard the oceans as a shared global common with equal opportunity rights for all user states. Consequently, unless a sea space is a site of overlapping claims or a contested enclave in a geopolitically troubled spot, no coastal state ever actively denies another the use of the high seas. All of these would be undersupplied without collective action. So, there are different types of public goods like environment quality, public health, the generation and dissemination of knowledge, global financial stability, peace and security from physical harm, infrastructure for transportation and communication, legal system in which people understand the rules, can make long-term contracts and have a system for settling disputes. Institutional mechanisms have been established to facilitate cooperation and arrive at consensus among the member countries. Some of the important institutions as mentioned earlier are WHO, ILO, UNDP, World Bank, etc. We may discuss two of them today. UNDP and global public goods. In 1999, UNDP published a book, Global Public Goods, International Cooperation in the 21st Century. The book pointed out that with their non-rivalry, non-excludability, non-time bound and global attributes, global public goods are short of supplies despite the need. The book identifies international cooperation as a means to deal with the undersupply of such goods. The role of the UNDP is to reduce the social costs of adherence or alignment by developing countries to the agreements. Its acceptance is greater due to it being part of the United Nations. UNDP is particularly active in the three areas: establish global norms and standards for various shared problems or socio-economic goals, and follow up to the commitments made by the governments towards them. Pool and share the knowledge of best practices and resources with the international community and various governments, and work with developing country governments to promote good governance and create the necessary enabling environment for sound socio-economic development. For example, Sustainable Development Goals. Member countries have agreed to include and mainstream sustainable development goals into national policies, plans and strategies. At the same time, there is consensus that such actions would depend on the national realities and circumstances of the particular country. Mainstreaming process may differ from country to country. Another important player is the World Bank. It is recognized that without an adequate provision of global public goods, markets cannot function efficiently, preventing the production of many private goods. For the provision of global public goods, financing is a crucial challenge. International agencies like World Bank may provide concessional financing to meet global objectives on a large enough scale to make a difference. At the same time, it also faces the challenges of dealing with interconnected problems like water access and quality or global warming and prioritization of interventions. The other challenges that it faces are finding alternative ways of paying for global public goods, whether the resources are being used cost effectively and efficiently, finding common ground for making decisions about global public goods, especially where internationally agreed upon frameworks do not exist for the role of the bank, and the comparative advantage of multilateral banks, United Nations agencies, and bilateral donors in providing global public goods. The bank has created a development grant facility, but there is debate about its appropriateness and the criteria for grant financing for sectors like education. Then there are global policy networks which influence and facilitate the cooperation among countries. These networks are essentially tri-sectoral alliances among governments, civil society, and the private sector, with international organizations participating in some form. There could be threat to global consensus. There may be disagreements over issues, and consensus building may require time and efforts. There have been cases of member states withdrawing from an agreement, and there can be problems if some country refuses to accept verdicts of international bodies. In the India way, S. Jaishankar, India's Minister of External Affairs, he says that decade from the 2008 global financial crisis to the 2020 coronavirus pandemic has seen a real transformation of the world order. The very nature of international relations and its rules are changing before our eyes. For India, this means optimal relationships with all the major powers to best advance its goals. We can say that this holds true for all the countries. Thank you.